Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha TV. You're watching Discussion today with me, Tina Jha. On the show today, we are going to talk about an issue that has been a matter of debate for years and which impacts the harmonious coordination between the three organs of our democracy, the legislature, the executive and the judiciary. We are going to discuss the issue of potential judicial overreach, an issue raised by Vice President M. Venkaiah Naidu at the All India Presiding Officers Conference last week. While speaking on the theme of harmonious coordination among the judiciary, executive and the legislature, the Vice President raised concern over a spate of recent judicial pronouncements, which, according to him, give a distinct impression of judicial overreach. The Vice President, in fact, cited some examples, which include judicial pronouncements on the Diwali fireworks, cases on registration and movement of vehicles from the National Capital Region through Delhi, banning use of vehicles of certain make after 10 or 15 years, also monitoring of police investigations, etc., saying these have led to questions over whether the judiciary is entering the domains of the legislature and the executive. The Vice President, in fact, also referred to incidents of the executive and the legislature also exceeding their brief as prescribed in the Constitution. So on Discussion today, we will analyze the concerns raised by the Vice President over disharmony between the three organs, incidents of potential overreach by the judiciary, and how can a harmonious relationship be maintained among the three vital pillars of our democracy. Joining us on the show today are two special guests. Let me introduce them to you. We have with us Mr. Amitabh Sinha. He is Senior Lawyer, Supreme Court. And Mr. Chakshu Roy, he is Head of Outreach, PRS Legislative Research. Welcome, gentlemen, on this edition of Discussion today. Mr. Chakshu Roy, allow me to begin the program with you by getting your views. You heard the Vice President last week speak about a spate of incidents of recent judicial pronouncements, which, according to him, which he says give a distinct impression of judicial overreach. What do you think? In the name of judiciary, have there been incidents of judicial overreach?
Tina, the way I look at the things that have transpired in the domain of the executive, the legislature and the judiciary is this. The three organs of our governance framework, the Constitution specifies that there should be a separation of powers. None of the institutions should impede upon the space which is earmarked for the other institution by the Constitution.
Yes.
Now, the space for lawmaking is a prerogative only of the legislature. And over the years, we have seen multiple instances where that space, where judiciary has indicated or passed judgments about the fact that a certain law needs to be created. One final instance that I'd like to talk about when it comes to possible judicial overreach is the internal affairs of the legislature. So, for example, in the last couple of years, we have witnessed instances where judicial pronouncements have been made about the way a trust motion should be carried on the floor of the House. On the day of the trust motion, what should be the business of the House, how the outcome of the trust motion should be brought into a sealed envelope and brought to the court. Now, very often, part of the argument that is given is that because the legislature vacated its space, somebody had to intervene, and then the judiciary intervened for public benefit.
Okay.
Now, while that could be one argument, the Constitution does not allow for certain things like this.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let me get in Mr. Amitabh Sinha's perspective on that. Sir, what's your opinion? Is it judicial activism, an argument which Mr. Roy points out that, where the legislature and the executive are lacking in their duty, the judiciary steps in. So that's judicial activism, or do you see it as judicial outreach in certain pronouncements which the Vice President has pointed out?
Tina, this particular issue is, a very sensitive issue and very a contemporary issue also, because during past 20 years this issue has started and the debate has started, and that also because of the particular reason, according to my perception and belief, that when sometimes the executive becomes weaker because of some fractured mandate and all. So this is a general natural law that vacuum never happens. So the judiciary takes on, and then they take so many other steps which actually is not prescribed or not expected. So you see, in our constitution, all three segments of the constitution, they are pillars.
Yes.
They are not only simple organs; they are pillars of the constitution. So pillars must be with a balance of power, and sometimes one pillar is because of certain reasons in this democracy, like legislative powers or the executive powers, because of the fractured mandates. It happens sometimes, but that precedence actually should not happen every time. So judicial activism should become judicious activism. That is very important. And sometimes this judicial activism goes up to certain extent where judiciary's own image becomes tarnished, and this is very dangerous for the democracy. So judiciary should be very careful about their own area, their own particular segment. So in Article 13, read with under Article 13, the judiciary has been given power for review, judicial review, and that is because of that Article 13, Article 32 and 226, High Court and Supreme Court, they have got powers to evaluate certain decisions of the executive, no doubt, and executive also, executives and legislative both. But the problem here is that the evaluation should be on that particular ground where some excesses are there, not on the policy issues. So sometimes this activism goes beyond the required line, and that judicious activism, which is actually required, becomes judicial activism.
Yes. So do you suggest there should be a thin line that should be demarcating what is judicious activism and what is judicial overreach? Because when the courts interfere in policy matters, that's where the biggest problem lies, sir.
Exactly. That is a very fine line division, and it's also tightrope walking. So judiciary is expected to maintain particular balance, and that balance should be practical as well as ethical, both. So here judiciary has larger responsibility to maintain the sanctity of constitution, which actually has been divided into three parts. So if judiciary starts taking its power beyond its expectation, then the crisis starts happening, and particularly in those situations when the transparency of being part of the judicial fraternity and legal fraternity, I have no problem and no qualms in accepting this. When that NJAC, National Judicial Appointment Commission, which actually was very important for the transparency of judiciary in appointments. So at that time when the judiciary, the legislative wing of the constitution, the parliament, approved and passed a very good law. So judiciary actually stuck down. So here I think that judiciary should maintain a proper line, and that actually is not in the interest of judiciary itself. It is in the interest of the entire constitutional sanctity.
So I'll come back to you and understand the root cause of this tussle and what can be done to overcome this. But coming back to Chakshu Roy on the argument that judiciary tends to fill in the vacuum which is sort of created by the legislature not doing enough. Isn't it going to lead to a lot of turbulence? Because what if the legislature starts to interfere or transgress, saying there are problems within the judiciary, there are so many pending cases, and let us just intervene and take care of things? So will it not lead to a lot of turbulence? Because when there are three clear-cut compartments in the constitution, why transgress into the powers of the other?
Tina, let me extend what Mr. Sinha was saying.
Sure.
I think Mr. Sinha used a wonderful analogy of three pillars. Now, in a democratic system, if one of the pillars, let's say, increases in height or reduces in height, it, to a certain extent, it destabilizes the framework of democracy on which, we work. So the separation of powers gets devolved. The other part is these three institutions are not answerable to each other. The executive is accountable to Parliament. the laws that are made by Parliament can be scrutinized by the judiciary. But these three institutions can't interfere in any other's work. So what is needed is more of a respect between institutions, right? The executive respects the legislature and the judiciary, and vice versa. And the legislature, in turn, ensures that whatever it is passing, if it is if it is struck down by the courts, then it looks back and says, what were the infirmities in the law, and tries to address that. Having said that, the respect for all these institutions comes from each other. The executive respects the legislature, the executive respects the judiciary. For any institution to gain that respect and continue having that respect, it is essential that each of those institutions work in their demarcated boundaries. The moment they stop doing that, then we could have a problem wherein, let us say, if there is a judicial order which is not implemented onto the ground, at the end of the day, the all judicial orders as per the constitution have to be implemented onto the ground by the government. Now, what would happen in a case where a judiciary's order is not implemented onto the ground? Now, those kind of situations should not arise. And the way they would not arise is, as Mr. Sinha is pointing out, that if there's clear-cut boundaries which are already laid out, that thin line between policy, judicial overreach, or judicial activism, as you're calling it, those thin lines need to be maintained and walked very tightly, not only consciously, but principally also.
Mr. Sinha, coming back to you, what he says is a very important thing, that three pillars and all three of them have to respect each other. But what we are seeing in recent years is that one of them is trying to assert supremacy over the other, and that perhaps was the reason why the Vice President had to, cite examples of some recent pronouncements, which were clear-cut examples of judicial overreach. In such a scenario, how can this tussle be taken care of so that, perfect coordination between the three organs is established?
Tina, the most important responsibility actually lies on judiciary, because judiciary generally is considered as sacrosanct. Talking about judiciary, raising finger on judicial reviews and judicial judgments, this is not very common, and people always respect judicial positioning in the country. So now when you give some, you take some. So when the respect is highest, then the responsibility also is highest. So actually, according to my perception and my view, judiciary has that onus to maintain that line in a very judicious manner. As I have already used this word, judicious. Not judicial activism, it should not be there. Judicious activism, and where the laws are not there, then judiciary should take, just like in Vishaka versus state of Rajasthan case. When the laws are not there, then judiciary can intervene. And when the law is there and executive is doing its job, or the legislation is doing its job, then Supreme Court only has limited power to review as per the judicial framework, whether it is violative of any judicial arrangement or it is not. So because of that only, under Article 32 and 126, the courts have been given power for writ. And according to writ, the court can evaluate, but not everywhere. So that is a very important and thin line. And when judiciary will maintain its dignity, then other pillars will follow. And generally, what my perception and my opinion is, that other pillars are generally maintaining a respectful attitude towards judiciary. So judiciary should also, maintain the similar type of graceful approach towards other pillars of the Constitution. And then this basically is a very give and take type of a relationship.
Certainly.
So if one pillar will start trying to violate, then other pillars will also follow the same line. So I think judiciary has more responsibility to maintain this decorum, which actually Constitution has given.
So Chakshu Roy, coming back to you for your opinion on, There is another argument that whatever the court does is for social welfare, is for larger public good, and there are legislations which are not implemented properly, so the courts interfere and ensure. And there are several instances that are put forward, for example, controlling air pollution in Delhi, for example, implementation of the CNG vehicles, and so on and so forth. There are several good intentions judicial pronouncements as well. So in such scenarios, what is more important? Balance of powers or ensuring public good? What should the judiciary go for then?
Tina, I am no one to advise any arm of the, our constitutional framework as to what they should be doing.
But to maintain a harmonious relationship, sir.
Absolutely. So here's what I think, should happen. There is so to give you an example, there is a line. See, the line is that the government proposes legislation to Parliament. Parliament discusses that legislation. After that legislation is passed, the judiciary can then sit on judgment of that legislation, whether it is constitutional, whether it is not constitutional. Now, this chain follows a particular sequence. The lawmaking chain follows a particular sequence. Now, this chain shouldn't be starting from the judiciary pointing out that, oh, you know what, you haven't made this law, please make this law. So the moment that happens, then there is a little bit of a breakdown, because the legislature is supposed to be responsible for the power of the purse. They need to understand as to how much money is going to be needed to implement a particular thing, a particular policy. Things can be tied together. If it is a question of environment pollution, it is also a question of livelihood. It's also a question of existing legislation which needs to be harmonized, so to say. But amongst all of this, if you to give you an example as to how things have sometimes gone out of hand, I remember, back in the day, there was a case where there was a little bit of a conflict between the Allahabad High Court and the UP Vidhan Sabha. And then a simple matter then became a constitutional crisis, because, the legislature then passed certain orders against a High Court judge. Now, those are things that are better avoided in a well-functioning democracy. So the institutions have to have their own system of checks and balances, whether it is the judiciary, whether it is the legislature, whether it is the executive, to decide as to where does my line stop and where does the other institution's line begin. No institution can point the finger to the other person and say, oh, you know what, you're crossing my line, because that in itself would become a crossing of the line. So that self-awareness, that self-check about this is what I should be doing and this is something which is outside of my purview, that's an awareness that should come to the institutions. And that awareness should not waver. It's not as if that, in one 5-year term, something is happening in a particular way, and in the next 5-year term, something else other happens. That should remain consistent all throughout. And the only way to do that is to drill that into the institutions, to say, please think of your institutional mandate as prescribed by the Constitution. Okay. At the end of the day, everybody takes an oath onto the Constitution. The judges take an oath to the Constitution, the executive takes an oath onto the Constitution, so does the legislature. And how do you fulfill your oath to the Constitution is by being true to the Constitution, or what the Constitution allows you to do and does not allow you to do.
Indeed, the Constitution is supreme, and that's why everyone should abide by it. Mr. Amitabh Sinha, one concluding remark from you on, valuable suggestions put forth by Mr. Chakshu Roy as to how there should be self-checks and balances for institutions. But where does the onus lie for institutions? Because for individual institutions, if you see, if the judiciary thinks whatever it's doing is for larger public good, for social welfare, and the legislature continues to argue that, you're interfering in policy matters, this tussle is just going to go on and on. So what is the best way forward to put an end to it and maintain harmonious coordination between the three organs, the three critical pillars of our democracy?
What Chakshuji has said, I totally agree with that. And in a most balanced manner, he has tried to describe this delicate, issue. I really admire and appreciate his style. My point is, see, what exactly is happening these days needs some correction. And how the correction should be there? India is a democracy. We are talking about democracy, constitution. This democracy is for the people, by the people. So people are the main tool. So the debate which you are doing it, and what actually is should be pursued very properly and vigorously, that the public debate should be there. So debate and public opinion is the main check balancing act for all the pillars of the constitution: legislative wing, executive, and judiciary as well. So when the debate will be a live debate, a very consistent debate will be there, then all the organs will try to act in a proper manner, because they will come to understand that this is the public opinion, public demand. So you are doing right way. And I am hopeful, I am very optimistic about the Indian Constitution, because Indian Constitution and Indian society in general, in my personal belief, is the most moderate, सबसे ज़्यादा उदार समाज है हमारा. So this, because of this unique nature of our society, it will certainly do corrective steps and measures, and the sanctity of the Constitution will be maintained because of this public opinion drive which you are doing. My congratulations to you.
All right. So with that remark, I'll have to call it a wrap on this edition of Discussion today. Thank you to both my guests for joining us on the show today and putting forth your perspective on this very, very important subject. Pleasure having you on the program. So that's it from us on Discussion today. You can also watch our program on YouTube and send us your feedback and suggestions as well. We'll be back same time tomorrow with another subject. Thank you very much for your time.